Level up your LA Kings experience with the new Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access. Enjoy great seats to the game along with premier dining inside the Lexus Club with all-you-can-eat food and non-alcoholic beverages. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings item and parking with your purchase. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn rewards on each purchase from the only ticket company that rewards you for buying. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings.
You're listening to an LA Kings podcast. For more episodes of this and every other Kings program, visit lakings.com/podcast.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
All right, welcome back to All the Kings Men. Joining me today, goaltender Hampton Slukynsky and his brother Grant. How are you doing today, Grant?
Good.
How are you doing today, Hampton?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
So we're here at day 3 of, well, I guess day 4, but whatever. We're here at Dev Camp, and I knew I was going to talk to you guys. And so, Hampton, we've spoken before, and I, know about your career. And Grant, I was looking into your career, and I started, and I wasn't entirely sure I knew where I was going to start. And then I found an interview, Grant, that you gave, where you very, very briefly mentioned the backyard rink at your guys' home. And I thought, well, that's interesting. But then you mentioned that your dad turned a golf cart into a Zamboni to manicure the rink, which I thought was interesting. So then I Googled backyard rink, golf cart, Zamboni, Slukynsky, and I found 5 or 6 pictures. This is not a backyard rink. This is like a professional rink that you guys happen to have in your backyard at home.
Yeah. Our rink it's special. Yeah, it's really cool. It's got
everything.
There's
lights, sponsors on
music.
The boards.
Oh yeah, we got the ads up. We got the American and Canadian flags in the backyard. Light them up at night, and yeah, it's hot water on the ice, the best ice in the country.
When it's not cold out, what happens to the rink?
Just grass in the summer. Got to mow it.
You have to mow your rink.
Yeah.
So obviously you guys are not living there now anymore, but does your dad still maintain it?
He does, yeah. So he still makes it every year, and we have cousins that use it, and their buddies use it too. So it still gets a lot of use.
Do neighborhood kids just show up and say like, "Can we play on your rink?"
Not really. No, we kind of live out of the town, so
okay.
Not really any neighbors. But yeah, we had our buddies over almost every night in the wintertime when we were growing up.
Now, Grant, obviously Hampton is the younger brother of the two, and anytime there's a younger brother who's a goaltender, the story fits the same profile, which is younger brother tagged along, wanted to hang out with the older brother. The older brother played hockey, made the kid play goaltender. It sounds like that's what happened.
You got it. Yep, that's the story. So growing up in the backyard rink, Hammer being 3 years younger, that's quite the difference, especially when you're younger. So we said, you want to play, you're in the net, and that's kind of how it's unfolded. And looking back and where we are now, it's pretty cool.
Now, are you guys competitive about it, or do you take credit for his success now since you're the one who made him a goalie?
I don't take any credit for his success. No, he works his tail off and extremely detailed in his craft and the way he goes about his business every single day. So, to have him start being a goalie, maybe a little bit, but he definitely deserves the credit.
Did you want to be a goalie?
I think when I was super young, yeah.
Because it gave you a chance to play with your brother, or
yeah,
just because
exactly.
you wanted to be a goalie?
Well, I think that was the start of it, but then as I kind of looked into it and started watching goalies, I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. So, I'm glad I did.
And how? So you guys grow up together. Obviously, you're brothers. You play all the time. But how did the decision come about to play together at college? Like, where does that start, Grant? Like, who's the first person that suggests it?
Yeah, so I'll start. So before my senior year of high school, I was touring some schools, and I loved every visit that I took, and chose Northern Michigan, and from there was committed there all the way through. Once Hammer became, you were a senior, right?
Yeah, before my senior year.
Yeah, so before Hammer's senior year, kind of same situation, same timetable. Northern started recruiting him, and from that point on, it was never a we want to play with each other, this dream growing up. It just kind of worked out that way, and having him commit to Northern, we were extremely excited to play together. I played a year at Northern, loved my time there, and we had a coaching change early last summer, the summer of 2024, and from there we thought, all right, we were planning to play together. We were really excited about that, but we thought with the coaching change, let's look elsewhere. And from there, our goal was to find a spot where we could both play together, and we talked to some schools, and fortunately we talked to Western Michigan, and they were both interested in us, and we felt that we would play significant roles with that team. And looking back, it's been a great decision. We absolutely love it at Western.
I grew up in Southern California and have lived my entire life out here, so I knew two things about Western Michigan. It was in Michigan, and it was in the western part of Michigan. When you made the change, Hampton, did you think that like NCAA title was a realistic possibility?
Yeah, I think we want to go somewhere we could win too. So we had known that they'd been to 3 straight NCAA tourneys, so we knew we were going into a really good program that was on the rise. And from the second we got there, we knew it was a winning culture, and just how everything's handled there, from the coaches to the leaders to all the players to the staff. When we got there right away, we knew we had a chance to win. And obviously you need all the right players and pieces to win, and we had that. So it worked out.
And Grant, I know that your dad and 3 uncles all played college hockey. How important were they in just talking to you guys and letting you know what to expect and how to approach it and where to go?
Yeah, talking to our dad, ever since we started playing hockey, he said, you just got to go where you're wanted. And we had a Zoom call together with Western Michigan, and we just felt from the moment we got on that Zoom call that we were wanted there. It was going to be a great place to go and develop and get an education and learn from some great people, starting with Pat Ferschweiler. And, listening to our dad's advice, going where you're wanted, it was, it proved to be true.
And you saved your parents the hassle of trying to pick one team over the other, right? Every now and then there's brother versus brother. You guys are on the same team. Have your parents ever thanked you for saving them that hassle and just, they get to root for both kids at the same time?
No, but it makes their lives a lot easier just having to go to one spot now,
right.
Now that we're on
Sure,
the same
yeah.
team. So
just travel costs alone. Yeah.
Still a ways from home, but at least we're at the same spot.
I think they only missed 4 games last year.
That's impressive.
Yeah, out of 42. So they were troopers traveling all over.
And the 3 uncles, where's dad fit in the age distribution of those 4 kids that all played college hockey?
So he would be the oldest,
Okay.
and then his younger brother played at Lake State. His name is Freddie. Played at Lake Superior State, and then my mom is the oldest of her 3 siblings. Older brother Chris played at Dartmouth, and then the younger brother Chad played at Michigan State.
Wow, so that's a lot of hockey playing family members.
Mm-hmm.
Were there ever moments in your teens or, growing up that you had to rely on family members who had siblings that played hockey to help mediate, conflicts or talk you through anything?
I think just growing up, just always talking to them about their experiences and just learning from them. I don't think there was like a certain question or a certain point where we, asked them a specific thing. It was just hearing all their stories from the times when they played. So.
And I'm sorry, I got to go back to the golf cart Zamboni. Like, how does it? Is it an actual golf cart?
It is. We use it to golf in the summer. Yeah, we trailer it out to the golf course. And
is it sponsored?
It is Lamplighter Hockey. Yeah, no, it's not sponsored.
So what is the best thing about Hampton's game? Like, as a forward, if you're shooting on him, what's the hardest part about Hampton's game to beat?
His competitiveness. Yeah, the way he competes. This is our first time playing together at Western Michigan was this past season, and just seeing the competitive fire every single drill, every single game. He's never out of a play. It may look like, he's beat, and then he'll throw his glove up and make a big save. I would say, as far as his game, his flexibility. So competitiveness, but then flexibility. He's been able to do the splits ever since I can remember. 3 years old, we'd be at a birthday party, and our uncles would be like, Hammer, do the splits, and you just pop down and do the splits. So the competitiveness, along with how flexible he is, I think are 2 great attributes that help him be as good as he is.
How uncomfortable is it to hear your older brother say nice things about you?
No, he does it a lot. Does it too much probably, yeah. But yeah, it's cool to hear.
And who reached out about an invitation to Dev Camp for you this year, Dan?
Andy Johnson.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm assuming that relationship was built because he was there to both of you at the same school and you got to know him.
Yeah, so Andy was actually our GM in Sioux City.
Right.
When I played in Sioux City and got to know him over the years. And Andy's a great guy, and also talked to Teddy Belisle as well.
Teddy's great.
Love Teddy. Fantastic.
So thoughts on the facility, dev camp. It's day 3 now. It's one scrimmage so far at the point that we're recording this. There'll be a second one later today, but 3 days worth of drills. I'm sure meetings. Thoughts on how it's going so far, Hampton?
Yeah, it's been great. Every time I come out here, this is my 3rd time now. Just feel more comfortable every time. Know the people, know all the staff, and just know everything works. So yeah, I just feel really comfortable. I'm confident here. Know everyone, and yeah, it's been really great. Everybody's first class here, and obviously the facilities are. I don't think you can get much better than this. So just try to enjoy the time out here and enjoy being treated like an NHLer for a week.
And we talked to Jarrett Stoll on Monday, Grant, and he talked about the drills in the morning, the meetings, and then the scrimmage in the afternoon, trying to see who took the lessons, took the things that they tried to, pardon the pun, hammer into you guys with the brief amount of time they have, and who shows up, where it shows up in that scrimmage on Monday afternoon. Is there a lot of teaching going on, or is it just trying to keep your head above water as far as processing all this new information?
For me, it's been an experience where I came into this just trying to learn as much as I could. And it's been great so far. Day 1 doing a lot of shooting drills, day 2 more puck protection, and then today working on a lot of wall work. It's been great. Just taking little things. At the end of yesterday, we were working on face-offs, so being able to work with a guy like Stoley was fantastic. Just little tips and tricks on draws that I've never really heard or never really been taught. So for me, just trying to gather as much information and learn as much as I can, it's been a great experience so far.
And I'll throw this one out to either one of you. What's the most LA thing you've had an opportunity to do during one of these camps or during this camp?
Yeah, I would say just this year probably going to the beach. Yesterday we didn't do that last year. We did that my first year, but it's about all we've done besides been at the rink. So I would say that for sure.
Is the weather all right?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I think it was around
a little bit overcast.
It was like 70 degrees. It was sunny yesterday, so had to throw some sunscreen on so I didn't get burnt.
I don't know if you guys know about June gloom, but it's a Southern California thing.
Okay.
You wake up in the morning in June and it's overcast and everything.
Yeah, you kind of notice that. Even today when we were walking to the rink, it was like that.
I like it personally because in August it'll get miserable hot, but for now, I like it. All right. Slukynsky's, thank you very much for joining me, and I'll look forward to seeing you around.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Ever wonder what top athletes eat to perform at their best? Superfood Direct, the preferred catering partner of the LA Kings, is here to fuel your game. For athletes, nutrition isn't just fuel, it's the key to peak performance. Superfood Direct delivers chef-prepared meals that help you build strength, boost endurance, and recover faster. With over 11 years of experience, every meal is balanced with the perfect mix of proteins, carbs, and healthy fats to power you on and off the ice. Ready to fuel your greatness? Visit superfd.com/direct and get 20% off your first order with promo code LA20. That's LA20. All right, it is Wednesday, July 2nd when we're recording this. Zach Dooley joining me. How are you doing today, Zach?
Jesse, I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm a little bit tired. You and I just
Me too.
wrapped up about less than an hour ago. You and I wrapped up day 3 of Dev Camp. And, I was chatting with Hannah Davey, who was at Toyota Sports Performance Center.
It's great to see Hannah today, wasn't it?
But she made an observation, and I agreed with her, and I'm curious to know what you think. It just felt different this year, and I have no idea how. Like, I can't put my finger on it. It just felt different.
Dev camp?
Yeah.
I thought it felt the same, but I felt like I feel a little bit less connected to it.
Yeah.
This year. And I
maybe
think
it's the decentralized draft. I don't know. I don't know.
And I think too, a lot of it is like some years, like there's no overlap with free agency. This year, there felt like a lot of overlap for some reason. It was like free agency was day 2 of camp, which almost was like taking up my own personal thought process on day 1. And it's like today's day 3, getting into it, but then tomorrow is the last day. I don't know. It did feel a little different in that regard, but like the on ice portion felt very similar.
Well, yes, the on ice always feels the same to me. But I think part of it was just 4th of July falls at the end of the week, whereas in the last couple of years, I feel like it's felt in the middle of the week. So we've had shortened weeks.
Yeah.
Which maybe put more pressure on the amount of time I don't know. Like I said, I can't quite put my finger on it. I do think part of it is, though, the Kings drafted 9 players, and I know not all 9 of them are in camp this year, but that's a lot of players.
A lot of dudes.
And even though there are some players like Otto Saline or Caleb Lawrence, like there are some names of guys that have been there for 3 or 4 years, there are more guys who are there for the first or second time. And, like Kirill Kirsanov, even though he was drafted a while ago, it's first time here. So I haven't actually gone down the schedule or the roster, but if we look at guys who are actually putting in their first dev camp, I don't know, maybe that's part of it. I'm not sure.
It's a pretty healthy mix, right? And I feel like, some years you've had guys who have played in the NHL, like, the Byfields and Kalievs and Bjornfoots a few years ago were there as like guys who had NHL games. And this year it's a younger group for sure. Your veterans are guys who have played maybe a year in Ontario, like an Angus Booth type is probably the most senior guy there. And he's just coming off like a rookie year in the AHL. So I agree on that front for sure. It's a lot more, it's new faces. There are some, returning people for sure, but it feels like 3/4 of the guys on the ice are guys who are there for the first time. Whereas in years past, it's definitely felt a little bit more maybe consistent year to year. So maybe that's got something to do with it.
And also, and I guess I'm sort of stumbling onto part of it. I can't remember how many years ago it was that the Athletic ranked the Kings as having the top prospect pool. But you and I in our sleep could have run down it was Turcotte, Thomas, Kaliev, Spence, Clark, Byfield, Kupari, right? We all knew the names backwards and forwards, and every year at Dev Camp, those were the names. But now the Kings have made the playoffs 4 years in a row. They've traded a bunch of first-round picks. And so the younger players, even the high-profile ones, are not looked to be the kinds of players that your Quentin Byfields or your Brant Clarks were. And so maybe that's also part of it. Like, would it be
organization's in a different place, right?
Yes, correct.
Like a lot of guys have graduated, a lot of guys, the Byfield and the Clarks and the Turcottes, guys have been moved out for NHL players. So yeah, it's definitely a little bit different where, you could probably go 1 to 20 a while back. And now I think you can go, you still have the same amount of depth. I think it's just there's a lot more balance maybe towards the bottom and fewer guys at that top end because the Kings haven't picked nearly as many times in those first couple of rounds.
Yeah. And I mean, look, when you have players who are, you have 3 guys taken in the top 10 in Turcotte, Clark, and Byfield, and you have guys like, that were at the time projected to wind up as top 6 players. It's just a different feel. We are briefly going to talk about Dev Camp because there's one scrimmage left at the time that we're recording this. And, the reality is there's not a ton to be learned from your standpoint and my standpoint from watching one more scrimmage. So I feel like everything that's happened at Dev Camp this week is pretty much, unless somebody scores 10 goals tomorrow and suddenly turns into a completely different player and blows everybody away. You and I have watched 2 scrimmages and various amounts of drills, days 1 through 3. But let's just sort of revisit the draft. We'll just start at the top there and just start, in the first round. The Kings took with the 31st pick overall, right shot defenseman Henry Brustevich. He's at camp. He plays in London. I keep wanting to say Ontario because London is in Ontario, but
it is in the Ontario Hockey League.
Yeah, but not as he plays for the London Knights. He just won the OHL Championship and the Memorial Cup. He's a relatively large right shot defenseman, and I thought he's looked pretty good in camp so far. I mean, it's development camp, so nobody's looked poorly, but I thought he's represented himself well so far.
He looked very comfortable. I was paying more attention, I think, during the day 1 scrimmage than the day 3 scrimmage, and he did stand out, I thought, on day 1, and got the chance to speak with him after. It's pretty clear, great relationship with Jared Woolley, teammates in London, now both Kings prospects. A lot of excitement being drafted and joining the Kings organization. Definitely loves the offensive side of the game. I think you could tell he's a guy who likes to activate and likes to join the rush, comfortable with the puck on his stick. And it's kind of crazy. Like we talked with Matt Green today after day 3, and he mentioned, he's like, this guy's season only ended like 3 weeks ago. Like he was playing competitive games much longer than some other guys who might have been coming here off 2 weeks off, or 2 months off. Right. So if pros and cons there, he's probably much more in like game shape than some of the other guys, but also he's gone through like a grinding taxing playoff run that just ended, a little bit before the Stanley Cup Finals ended. So interesting there, like to see him for the first time. He's younger than most of the guys here, but a pick that I know the Kings were really excited about, especially trading down and still getting him. And I think he's been pretty impressive so far.
And he's playing for the London Knights, which by all accounts is as close to a pro level organization as you can find yourself in.
Yep.
And I assume that plays part of a role in, perceiving his ceiling, right? Like he's going to go and be handled by people who know how to create NHL players. So we hope the best, obviously, for Henry Brustevich. In the second round, the Kings took Wojtek Cihar. Apologies to everybody. That's how I'm going to be pronouncing it moving forward. He is a 6-foot left winger out of the Czech Republic. And I had a brief chance to chat with him. He seems like a very bright, friendly kid. I mean, look, I'm just going to keep repeating myself a bajillion times. All these kids seem like bright, friendly kids because if they've gotten drafted at this point or invited to camp, they've done something right at some point. Matt Green also pointed that out today after the scrimmage, right? Like you don't find yourself in an NHL development camp without impressing somebody. So, yep. But plays in the Czech Republic, played 43 games last year, and I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, it's a profile that looks cool. Like it's a guy who's in his draft year played at the World Juniors, which is 2 years under his age group. He played in the Czech men's league, so his level of competition I think was a lot higher than a lot of these kids coming in who played in like junior hockey. And I think he played a little bit more in the Czech league than a lot of like those 17-year-old kids get to play. So that was cool. Like I like those things about him. I like when like a drafted player plays overseas at the highest level in their country as opposed to playing in a junior league. So I like the profile of him. I can't say that I focused in on him a ton in the couple of scrimmages. You would know a little bit more. You've actually, had the chance to connect with him, but a guy, I think he was the 4th ranked international skater on the central scouting list, and the Kings got him at the end of round 2. So there's someone out there who really likes him, which is nice too. So seems like a pretty good pick for the prospect pool. Like you, I can't say a ton about him, but it's great that he was at the draft, got to experience that in person, and great that he was able to come to development camp this week.
And 2 things about him. One, to your point, 17 years old, youngest kid on his professional team, right? And that is very much not nothing. Like we're talking about a team with guys in their 30s and late 20s, a bunch of guys in their 20s and late 30s. He's the only teenager on the team. And he played 43 games out of what looks to be about 52. So, I mean, he was there.
Pretty impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he was at the draft. And also he was taken with the pick acquired when the Kings traded back in the first round. That's the second detail I probably should have thrown out there. He was taken 59th overall. So I guess that makes him the Carter George of this draft. Although he's not a goalie. But with
Carter George adjacent.
Yes, exactly. With the third round, or in the third round, the 88th pick, the Kings took Christian Epperson, and we're still early in this process, and fear not, everybody, we will bring you episodes all summer long where we break down these different players. But for right now, today, on July 2nd, Zach, I know very few things about Christian Epperson. One of them is that he possesses one of the few nicknames in my life that I have ever heard, and right away was like, I'm in on that nickname. I'm okay with it.
What do you got?
Crispy.
Yeah, I'm in too.
I really like that nickname. I generally don't like nicknames. They said it on the draft, and I was like, you know what? Crispy, I'm on board. Christian Epperson. It's not Epi. It's Crispy. I like it.
Crispy. I'm in on that. One of 2 players the Kings drafted who is not at development camp this week. So someone we'll have to wait until next summer, to get the chance to see in person. Cool to see a guy taking advantage of the new CHL NCAA rules. He played in the OHL last year with Saginaw, and he'll play at the University of Denver coming up. So he is going from major junior in Canada to the NCAA, one of the first players who will ever be able to do that. He is a guy who went undrafted in his first opportunity last year. The Kings get him this year. I think they would have been comfortable taking him a little bit higher if needed, but he was around when they picked at the end of the third round, which was great. Mark Yannetti talked about how guys in their draft plus one, the analytics say there's a lot more predictability there. So if you're taking a guy the second time around, you have a bigger confidence in him that if you're taking him this high, there is a more likely chance of success, which is good. Lot of exciting things, I think, with him. I think he's one of those guys who you can see a lot of upside with in round 3. And you can go to the University of Denver and like half the roster will be LA Kings prospects. So that's cool.
Yeah. And, so I when they drafted him and I started reading about him, and this is an ignorant comp. I don't know what I'm talking about, but the name that kept coming to mind when I was reading descriptions of him was Tanner Pearson. Left shot, left wing, drafted in his D+1, like you said, about the same height, similar description of his skating style, but also similar description of his playing style. So, we will talk to Mark Yannetti again very soon. We'll talk to Scott Wheeler. We'll reach out to somebody from Saginaw to try and find out about Crispy. But very curious to see what kind of player he turns into, because we, like you said, we didn't get a chance to see him at Dev Camp this week. Kings had 2 picks in the 4th round. First up with the 120th pick, Caden Harrington, one of 3 defensemen, 2 who shoot right. Another D+1 and 6'2". So we've really started to see the team sort of move away from the predictable pattern of defensemen and the style that they play. Played in the USHL for the last 2 years and was there at camp, and I thought it looked fine.
Led the USHL in goals last year amongst defensemen, 16 goals from the blue line, pretty good, going to the University of Vermont next year, which is close-ish to home for me. And learned today that he played 2 years of junior hockey in my area growing up with the Clifton Park Dynamo. So we chatted about that for a little bit, which was pretty cool. I don't think he expected to see someone
probably
who
not
had ever lived in that area before, and neither did I. But yeah, it seemed a guy very comfortable when he had the puck. Like I can say that he stood out to me a few times positively. Like you don't really get a sense for how a guy defends in a development camp, but how comfortable does he look when he has the puck on his stick? And I just noticed a lot of times when he did have it, he looked very comfortable with the puck, which tracks, with I think what we've heard. So I think the Kings do a good job of adding defense to a player's game who might not have it. I think that seems to be a strength of the organization. Mm-hmm. So a guy like this who has a lot of those other gifts that maybe don't get taught as regularly within the Kings organization is a really good fit, right? Because he can add a lot of that defensive side of the game and seems very open and eager to doing so.
And, we got, as the years go by, you and I get a larger and larger glimpse behind the scenes. And, as I get to know some of the guys on the analytics team and Yannetti talks to us and everything, you start to find out how much process actually goes into scouting these guys. Yeah. It's way more complicated than just somebody bought a ticket, went to a hockey game with a notebook and a pen and wrote down some notes and said, "Oh, I like that kid." Right. It is a complex system of, trial and defense and presenting your case and even just for the camp invitees, right? Like I know that the thought is put into who gets invited, much less drafted. So we will again talk to multiple people and find out more about Caden Harrington. Also taken in the 4th round, 125th overall, a forward, Jimmy Lombardi. Great name, obviously, for Kings fans. Played for the Flint Firebirds for the last 2 years. And left shot center out of Toronto, Ontario.
One guy that I did not get the chance to talk to, but Josh Schaefer did on our crew. And Jimmy Lombardi said that he went upstairs for like 2 minutes during the second day of the draft. And that was when he got picked. And his mom started yelling like from downstairs when he wasn't there. So he didn't even see it on the TV, but seemed to be very, very excited. A lot of excitement in the Lombardi household when he did get picked. But probably, one of the guys I feel like I know a little bit less about among the players the Kings drafted. not the biggest guy, but seemed to produce pretty well in Flint, in the OHL, a guy who I think is working, on adding some size and some strength to his game, which are things that a smaller player needs to do to succeed at the next level. So I don't know a ton about Jimmy Lombardi. Excited to listen to, his coaches talk about him later in the summer and learning a little bit more for sure.
Yeah, and we don't know anything on the nickname front or anything like that. But again, Kings drafted so many players. That brings us to another guy with a great nickname, although there's some
nickname that we now know.
Yes, there's some question as to whether or not it's genuinely a nickname. But the goaltender is Petteri Rimpinen. He's out of Finland. I had a chance to talk to him today. Listen, I am torn now because the Kings have 4 goaltending prospects in George, Slukynsky, Rimpinen, and Portillo. And I like all of them as kids. And, I'm not going to pretend to know enough about them as goaltenders to have a preference, but I've spoken now to all 4 of them, and I have liked them all very much for different reasons. And I talked to Rimpinen for all of, 3 minutes today or whatever, but seemed like a really sharp kid. I liked his answers about the questions I asked. His nickname, Mr. Showtime, came from the World Juniors. He seemed amused by it, but not, it's a joke nickname. It's not something that he gave himself because he thinks that he's, all that.
And that's not his nickname. His nickname is Texas Pete.
Yeah, well, yes, amongst us, his nickname is now Texas Pete. Yes. But yeah, I mean, he just, listen, it's a pick. It's the pick I think that I have heard the Kings drafting team feel the most confident about, in the sense that it was a value pick for where it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be the one that shows up the most in the recaps I've read of the draft. Good value for a 5th round, etc. And for how good he looked in the World Juniors, for how good he has looked as a goaltender, to come to an organization that already has depth in the pipeline, low risk, right? Potentially high reward.
Yeah, and the most valuable goaltender at the World Juniors this past year by 2 different votes, which is pretty impressive. The tournament directors and the media almost willed his team to a win over the United States, which I think had a lot more depth in front of their netminders than Team Finland did. He's such an interesting profile because this guy played 40 games as a starting goalie in Liga, which is the top men's league in Finland, one of the top European leagues out there. And he was the guy at 18, 19 years old. He was the guy.
And you know how old the goalie with the next most amount of games played on that club was?
Probably 40.
30 years old. Yeah, there's a 30-year-old and a 32-year-old. And
so it's really impressive, right?
No, it's crazy.
To see that kind of body of work. You don't see that too often, especially I think at the goalie position. I had the chance to talk with him today. I thought he was as well spoken in English as I've encountered with a European prospect of that age. He was really, really conversational. He had a lot to say. Talked about the World Juniors. He talked about his season, talked about what he thinks he needs to improve on, talks about what he thinks he's good at. Thought it was really insightful. And I really appreciated the conversation. So I really like that pick. It's, I don't think the Kings went into the draft saying goaltender was a top priority, but when you see a guy like that in the 5th round, I think it becomes such a good value pick that you take a shot at it. So I'm very impressed so far. And Texas Pete, I think, is here to stay.
Honestly, you said he thought he was the most conversational in English out of any European prospect we've seen. He might be more conversational in English than a lot of the North American prospects we've
seen. Yeah.
He's well spoken,
super confident, in speaking the language, and he was very impressive, to say the least.
Yeah, I like Texas Pete a lot.
Texas Pete,
and now I'm torn because now I'm in love with multiple goalies, and it's the one position you can only have so many of. In the 6th round, with the 184th pick overall, from Bratislava, Slovakia, the Kings took Jan Hovan. And I got to tell you, man, I got nothing on this kid. I know that, was it Josh went and talked to him today, or was it Jack?
It was Josh.
Josh, okay. And I know very little about him. I didn't get a chance to talk to him. And it was very difficult to find anything about him just in research. So
European John Hoven, as he's
yes,
come to be
exactly.
known.
Yeah.
Another guy who, played at the World Juniors as a draft eligible guy for Slovakia. And I know it's smaller countries like Czechia and Slovakia who you have a little bit more opportunity, but it is still, I think, impressive when you have a guy 2 to 3 years below the maximum age playing at the U20 level. I always think that's pretty impressive. He was an alternate captain at the World Under 18 tournament, was over a point per game at that tournament. So one of the more promising prospects to come out of Slovakia, but he also played in Finland with his U20 hockey during the season, which I think is a higher level of competition than Slovakia. So like you, don't know a ton about him. Was again kind of like Wojtek Stihar, or however you said it, very highly ranked on the central scouting list for international skaters compared to where the Kings got him. So potentially some value there. There's somebody who likes him, but pretty good size. And a guy I'm excited to see kind of how he develops, because the Kings have done decently well picking from Slovakia. You have Martin Kromiak, who's done pretty well before that. There's Eric Chernak, who has a pretty nice NHL career, even if not in LA. So excited to see what the Kings saw in that player and how he keeps developing.
And played in the Ilinka Gretzky Cup for Slovakia under 18. So, I mean, it's like he has obviously, you don't get to the draft if you don't impress somebody. So
exactly
impressed somebody. First 7th rounder taken by the Kings, 196th overall out of Lakeville, Minnesota. Another overager, left shot center, Brendan McMorrow, not in camp, played in the USHL, played for the US NTDP. And obviously we will do our best over the summer to find out more about Mr. McMorrow. But for now, information hard to come by.
Probably the least that we have, right? Because he isn't here in camp. Similar situation to James Reeder. Came from the USHL, is not in camp, going to Denver next year as a freshman. So one of the guys I would say, we just don't know a ton about him. But the LA Kings and Denver seem to be a match made in heaven with players going to that program. So another guy who will go there, an NCAA powerhouse with David Carl as the head coach. So a guy that I think we might have a little bit more to learn about than some others when we talk with a coach or a GM over the summer, and looking forward to learning a little bit more about the way he plays.
And then the 9th and final pick for the LA Kings in this year's draft, in the 7th round, 216th overall, another defenseman, a left shot this time, Will Sharp. Played for Lethbridge for most of 3 seasons, then was traded to Kelowna at the end of last season, and is in camp and has, I thought, looked fine.
One guy who has stood out to me, I think, is he completes just about every pass he makes. Okay. And I've seen him complete a variety of different types of passes. One guy that I did have the chance to talk with today, and what I appreciated about what he said was that he understood his strengths and was open about his weaknesses. And they are sort of similar to what we talked about earlier with Caden Harrington, which is that he said he feels he's a good skater. He's comfortable with the puck on his stick. He likes to move the puck. But he said openly, he's like, I have to work on the defensive side of my game. And he said he defends well in his own mind with the way that he skates, but he has a lot to learn defensively overall. And he said that the development staff has made very clear to him early, these are the things you need to work on defensively. And I think that's the kind of player you like to bring in, especially late, is someone who does have some real strengths, and that's his puck movement and his skating and his offensive game, and is very open and coachable on the parts of his game that are not yet ready. So I think there's probably a long development curve there. Certainly I'd expect him to go back to juniors next year and continue to grow. But I just appreciated the way that he answered the question and the openness to getting better and not hiding from things that he's not yet as good at.
If a player is willing to be those things that you just described, the LA Kings have a track record of turning deep draft picks into NHL players, right? I mean, we don't have to go down the list, but like if you take your craft seriously and you come to LA as a defenseman, you'll be given an opportunity to hone your craft and become an NHL player, even if it's not for LA. There will be an opportunity. We talked to Matt Green again today. We spoke to Jarrett Stoll on Monday following the scrimmage. Listen, Dev Camp is what it is. There's not a ton to take away. It's the last opportunity for us to see a lot of actual hockey players in hockey gear on ice doing hockey things until September. Briefly, we don't have to go too deep into it. I do want to talk about the draft just as an evening, because we didn't really talk about it earlier this week because there was free agency and there was a lot of stuff to cover. I get that they'll go back to the way it was next year. And I get that the event was an imperfect event. And I understand that there were glitches and problems with it. I saw the bones of something that could have been interesting. Like, I'm basing this just on Mark Yannetti saying that he liked having it be decentralized, that there were things that he could do that he couldn't do when everybody's on the floor. And so given that, I imagine other teams probably have employees that feel that way. And I could see how you could tweak the format that they came up with for this year and fix some of the problems and make it better. And I think it's just kind of a shame that we're going to scrap it all and go back to the way it was just because it was imperfect. And then next year there'll be a whole different list of things to complain about that we've all complained about for years in the old format. But I thought there was something there for this format that, with a couple tweaks and big tweaks, don't get me wrong, but I saw something that could work in there.
It depends what people want the draft to be. Is it a show or is it a hockey driven event?
Right.
Because Yannetti, not the only person in a hockey ops role on team around the league who has said, you know what, this was better for us on the hockey ops specific side, right? You're in your own room. There's no other teams around you. You can use technology. You can do all these different things internally. You can be more comfortable speaking openly in your room about who you like, what's going on, about your list, and you can track things that way. So from a hockey ops standpoint, I think there are a lot of benefits to doing it this way. But with that being said, I think the show suffered. And I don't think it was due to lack of trying.
I just think they tried too hard.
Show, right? Yeah. They tried. Steve was, when we were talking with Steve, I was like, this sounds awesome. And they're making the best of a bad situation that I don't think anybody on the show side was hoping for. And I thought that the celebrity picks part was kind of cool. Like seeing Happy Gilmore make a pick for the Bruins, that was cool. The Goo Goo Dolls, that was cool. That kind of stuff was cool. I don't know from if you're a guy who got picked in the first round, was the moment any lesser than it was if you got picked in the first round last year? I don't know if it was. It was probably still pretty special. I think that the show part of it will probably continue to suffer if they do it this way, but the draft's kind of boring.
It's super boring
in the best of times, What I honestly feel like the people being critical of it are doing is that the media liked the social aspect of the draft and they didn't get that the way they normally did. So they're going to be critical of it because they didn't get that part of it. I don't know.
But as a TV show, and listen, this is all moot because they're changing it back next year. But I just watching it, the biggest glitches to me came from in the first round anyway, because the second round went pretty much the way the second round goes. I didn't notice too many differences. The first round, the glitches or the problematic parts came from half of the presenters were not there in person. So there was, you had to wait for the connection to happen. And then the other half is, listen, the Goo Goo Dolls, it's nice of you to say that was cool, but look, the Goo Goo Dolls were popular right after I got out of high school and I'm in my late 40s.
I'll tell you what, I've heard the Goo Goo Dolls brought up more than any other celebrity.
Because we work with a bunch of guys who are my age and they all know who they are. But
I thought it was cool.
But the point is, if you wanted to craft something that followed that format, every team has a set of broadcasters who, for a living, go out every night and speak, into a camera, not in front of a live audience, but every NHL play-by-play and color commentator is capable of standing in front of a draft room and reading a name off of a piece of paper. So this year they did the celebrity thing partially because it was LA, partially because it was the first time it was ever done, partially because there was obviously pressure to try a bunch of different things. But if you told me like we're doing this format for the next 10 years and let's iron out some of these wrinkles, I'd say, okay, we'll skip the draft house and we'll skip the celebrity presenters, and every team send your broadcasters. And when it's the 7th overall pick, send up the broadcasters from that team. They know how to thank the host city, congratulate the Stanley Cup winning team, which I don't think either of those things happened very much. Read the name and get the thing moving. You know what I mean? Like there are ways.
I do think in-person announcements would have helped.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that personally for me would have done much, but.
Oh, to be clear, none of this would do anything. It's still an incredibly slow, boring night. I just feel like I just feel like they were too ambitious, and good for them for being ambitious. But if you try 10 new things and 5 of them don't work, people are just going to complain about
this. Was not a thing that the league was calling for, right? This was strictly the NHL GMs insisting on this. Yeah. And I think it was almost overwhelmingly voted on, by the
26 out of 32 is what I heard.
Yeah. So I think, what, everyone tried. Sounds like it's going to be probably going back to the old format.
Yep.
So they'll, I'm sure, try some other stuff there, because I think the Sphere was probably the coolest draft I've been to for sure. And I think most people would say that who have been there.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's, building off of that and going from there.
I don't disagree, but I feel like that's like missing the obvious, which is there's one glaring reason that last year's draft was the coolest draft anybody's ever been to, and it was the venue. And
you're right.
Until they build 31 other spheres in the other 31 NHL cities, like it's not going to be as cool. And
also, maybe they can go back to the Sphere.
I mean, honestly, if they want to have the draft in the Sphere every year, I'm fine with it. If they want to say, guess what? Sorry, 31 NHL teams, Vegas is the de facto home of the draft. No complaints out of me. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up here because you and I are both, I think, exhausted. We are going to start launching into our summer content any day now. We will bring you profiles of all these players. We'll bring you interviews with some of the players. We'll get to free agency. We still have to revisit the top 10 questions of the offseason. Ontario still needs a head coach. There's a lot of stuff still to come, but the most pressing stuff happened in the last 6 days. Yeah.
And I think some cool interviews that you and I had the chance to get today with some players at development camp. So I think those should be pretty cool. I know there's going to be one with this episode that you probably already heard if you've been listening, but also a couple more really cool ones to come that I think we both enjoyed.
Yep. All right. Thanks very much, Zach. And thanks for listening, Kings fans. We'll talk to you soon.